The night of the special meeting arrived, and it carried with it an energy unlike anything the neighborhood had ever seen. Normally, HOA meetings were sparsely attended affairs filled with yawns, crossed arms, and reluctant participation. But this time, the parking lot overflowed with cars, and residents spilled into the meeting hall with a collective sense of purpose. They weren't there to be lectured. They weren't there to be intimidated. They were there for change. At the front of the room, the board sat stiffly, unease painted on their faces. They had heard rumors of the petition, whispers that something was brewing, but they didn't know the scope of it. They clung to the hope that this was just another angry outburst, one they could weather with arrogance and procedural deflection. But the crowd told a different story. This wasn't a handful of complainers. This was the majority of the community, and they had come armed with truth. The homeowner who had started it all sat near the center, papers in hand, calm but resolute. They didn't need to shout, didn't need to grandstand. The power was already shifting. The petition, thick with signatures, lay ready on the table, the ultimate weapon against corruption. The meeting began with the usual formalities. The board attempted to set the agenda, to frame the conversation in their favor, but it quickly unraveled. A resident stood and demanded acknowledgement of the petition. Another rose and asked about the driveway policy, why it was enforced without a vote. The crowd murmured, then grew louder, voices rising in unison. The board tried to gavel the noise into silence, but it was no use. Their authority had evaporated. And then the moment came. The homeowners stood, lifted the petition for all to see, and laid it before the board. The demand was simple, undeniable, and legally binding, a vote of removal. The board had no choice. The bylaws were clear, and the signatures were more than enough. For the first time in years, the residents, not the board, held the power. The tension in the room reached a breaking point. One board member sputtered, trying to claim the petition was invalid. Another sneered, accusing the homeowner of manipulating the community. But their words fell flat. The evidence was too overwhelming, the support too strong. The notebook of violations, the photographs, the video of the tow truck, all of it had been shared and burned into the minds of the residents. Every lie, every act of hypocrisy, every abuse of power had been exposed. The residents shouted back, demanding accountability. Some stood and read their own stories of harassment, their own fines, their own frustrations with the board's tyranny. The room swelled with collective anger, no longer fear, but righteous indignation. The board's smugness crumbled into panic. They had ruled through intimidation for too long, and now, stripped of that weapon, they were powerless. When the vote was finally called, the result was decisive. One by one, hands shot into the air, voices rang out, and the overwhelming majority demanded removal. The board members, once so sure of their authority, sat frozen, their positions slipping away with every raised hand. The final tally wasn't close. The board was dissolved, its members officially stripped of power, their reign of pettiness and intimidation brought to a humiliating end. The room erupted in applause, cheers, and even laughter. The sense of relief was palpable, like a weight had been lifted from the entire neighborhood. People embraced, shook hands, and thanked the homeowner who had sparked it all. For the first time in years, the community felt united, free from the shadow of arbitrary control. The board members, red-faced and humiliated, gathered their things in silence. They tried to maintain dignity, but it was gone, shattered beyond repair. As they slinked out of the meeting hall, they avoided the eyes of the neighbors they had tormented for so long. Their power was gone, their credibility destroyed, and their names forever tarnished. But while the victory was sweet, the homeowner knew the story wasn't finished. Removing the board was a triumph, yes, but revenge wasn't about a single win. It was about leaving a mark, about making sure the lesson was never forgotten. The neighborhood needed new leadership, one built on fairness, transparency, and accountability. And more importantly, the old board needed to face the consequences of their actions. Plans were already forming. With the evidence collected, with the bylaws in hand, there was a way not just to replace the board, but to hold its former members accountable for their misuse of funds, their unlawful towing, and their harassment of residents. They hadn't just been overbearing. They had broken rules, crossed lines, and acted illegally. And now, stripped of their protective shield of authority, they were vulnerable. The victory that night was decisive. But the final act of revenge was still to come. As the crowd filtered out into the night, spirits high and conversations buzzing with excitement, the homeowner lingered for a moment. The emptying room felt symbolic. the end of one chapter, the beginning of another. The war with the HOA board had been fought and won, but the reckoning was just beginning. The next chapter wouldn't just be about freedom, it would be about justice.